I would not say that they're moving backwards. I would say that given that the clock is ticking and the payroll is rising, that they need to dedicate themselves to that a little bit more assiduously.
Yeah, I mean, case in point with Wiggins, like the OKC game, 30 points, I think 6 rebounds. I mean, and playing hard defensively and making plays, and I still get sucked into it every once in a while. Like, this is what he can do. Like,
exactly.
He's actually, I think he's 5th in franchise history in 30-point games. Like, so he has this kind of thing inside of him,
right?
But then you just say, okay, every time we see it, you want to say the door is opening, but it's not. It's just a gust of breeze through the window instead of anything else. And so, but gosh, it gets frustrating to watch it, because when he has it on, like, I mean, that last flourish against the Thunder where he scores the layup in traffic, then he cuts Russell Westbrook off to force the kick out to Abrinas for a shot that you'll live with, and then he gets the rebound to finish it off. I mean, that is a max player type of a sequence, and we just don't see it enough on a night in and night out basis to say, okay, the light bulb is coming on yet. Yeah,
defense and rebounding are the parameters by which he should be measured. I think assist wise, he also a writer I respect locally, Dane Moore, has been clamoring for a Wiggins point appearance, which I have to say I'm not totally on board with and don't necessarily agree with. But I do think that there can be a two-man game out on the perimeter between Towns and Wiggins, and it happens every now and then, a high pick-and-roll situation where they're both so dynamic with the ball because of their capability of Wiggins getting to the rim really quickly and Towns with great range, and also a really good handle for somebody who's a center. Being able to have those two guys out there doing that is fun. And that's where I think Wiggins can get his assists. But I think more important is, can Wiggins at 6'8", playing the two guard, go in and get some rebounds? It's one of the underrated things Ricky Rubio used to do so well at the point. When you're, larger than other people, go get that board. And so that would be important. And then just in general, be able to step in on defense. He's quick. He's not a very good defender at the 3. That's one thing that has been proven, and that's one of the many ways that Covington has been a bonus for this team. They've kicked him down to the two-guard position where he's a much better defender. But, yeah, it's all about maturity, I think.
Yeah, and it's, you look at it, the rebounding is huge because this team has struggled on the boards a lot this season, and it's not
especially
because,
the defensive glass.
Yeah, and it's not because Towns is not grabbing 10 or 11 or 12 a game. It's because either it's Wiggins not doing it, or when they go small with the 2 point guards in the backcourt, they're not getting those long rebounds that so many other backcourts are able to tip and keep alive and keep,
very good point.
And keep possessions going. Okay, so we'll stop for a second here now for a quick minute on sodastick.com. They have a ton of great apparel that is for sale on their website, SOTASTICKCO.com. And right now, as the Vikings are getting ready to go and trying to go for the playoffs, they got a lot of purple paraphernalia you can get, a lot of North Star stuff, which I love, and as a longtime Minnesotan, nostalgic for that green and yellow patterns from back in the day. I sure wish the Wild could just take that back over and play in those beauties all the time. But they also have a bunch of Minnesota basketball stuff, Wolves-inspired stuff, George Mikan-inspired stuff. So it's all available at sodastickco.com. You can go to sodastick.com as well. It'll direct you right back to that website. And so we thank them for their support. And if you love this podcast, if you like to listen to it, it's always best to support the people that support us. So go to sodastick.com for a lot of great sports paraphernalia, a lot of great T-shirts, hats, all sorts of different knickknacks and things. And if you're a Gopher fan, they have a lot of great stuff about the Axes back and them finally winning. They're coming off a great bowl win as well. So a lot of good stuff there. Stop in and you'll find something you like for sure. So thanks again to sodastick.com. All right, Britt, we're going to kind of start to wind things down here on this podcast, and we always like to take a few Twitter questions from the audience to
do a
engage
lightning
on.
round. Huh?
Yeah, and so let's see what's out there today. Paul Winkles asks, Taj and Dario are playing about the same amount of minutes since the Butler trade. Any chance we see Dario step into the starter's role and steal a few more minutes from Taj? Love Taj, but more stretch shooting for the starters could make up for the loss of Taj's defense. And now, Britt, I would say, while Dario is not starting, I am seeing more from Tibbs in a lot of these games where he's playing a lot more in the fourth quarters of games. And so it seems like even if the torch hasn't totally been passed yet, there's a lot more of Towns, Šarić that we're seeing down the stretches, which is really the most important part of the game.
I agree. Dario's already won that battle, and he's won it in the mind of Tom Thibodeau, who would give Taj every advantage in that. Taj Gibson is a proud professional. If you deny him the starting and the closing and basically give him Gorgui Dieng minutes late in the second quarter, maybe a little at the beginning of the fourth, and that's it, I think that I think that mucks up the chemistry of this team. I don't think Taj is a bad player. I also think that he happens, for whatever reason, I think part of it is just to immediately, everybody game plans against Towns. And so what they do oftentimes in the first quarter is go to Taj. And Taj is a marvelous. His footwork is, and this column I just wrote about, my favorite things about each player. Watching Taj dance around in the paint is just a joy to watch. Doubt. And the fact that they're able to do that as they're counter-programming against this emphasis early on Towns, I endorse Taj starting, I guess is what I'm saying, but I also endorse the idea that both long-term and even right now, he's a better partner for Towns than Taj is, Dario, because he's a great cutter. Towns just got through talking to us about liking to hit people cutting on high post and low post passes. Dario's been a big part of that. So I think the sentiment of the questioner it aligns with our own. I would just encourage him to understand that you have to give Taj his rightful dignity. It doesn't hurt the team to do so, and that if he pays attention, he'll see that Dario has already won that war.
Well, and you and I have talked about this a little bit, too. One of the really interesting sort of facets as this season plays out, and let's say they still slip from playoff contention into, okay, they are just in that 12-13 range, and it's going to be hard to leapfrog back into it. You could, a lot of teams in that scenario would say, okay, let's just play our young guys. If we have to trade a veteran or two, we're going to, and we're just going to maximize that and essentially go into sort of a faux tank. But if this team went that way,
it wouldn't tank.
It wouldn't tank. Yeah, you play a Kogi more. Right. You play Dario more. Maybe Tyus gets a few more minutes. Like, all of these guys have performed so well in their roles that avenue could actually yield more success, even, and not even to say that Taj is bad or as a undue influence, but the guys that are there behind them have been so productive and positive on both ends of the court that could really absolutely be a benefit for them,
especially if you're able to get something for Taj's expiring contract. Even more enticingly, but less realistically, Derrick Rose. I think the disparity of opinion about what could be fetched for Rose in a trade and whether or not you want to trade him is wide open there. But if this team does, quote unquote, tank, getting assets for Taj Gibson and Derrick Rose, I don't know what you can fetch for that, but they are both expired at the end of April, mid-April, and I don't know salary cap wise. I know there are a lot of people out there who would love to re-sign Derrick Rose, and if you're Tom Thibodeau, you're probably one of them. Whether or not Tibbs is here is another question. But you have a very intriguing spring to look at, regardless of whether this team is in the playoff race, because you get to contemplate whether you get pieces back, and even if you don't, that salary savings, $14 million, comes off the books when Taj is done. You've got some interesting ways to go there. Yeah,
and that kind of gets to Sandro Young's question here about, do we foresee the Wolves being active at the trade deadline, and are they more likely to be buyers or sellers? I think it's too early to say whether they'd be buyers or sellers, but I do think that they are going to have opportunities available to them. If they are in the selling mode, there are going to be teams that are interested in Derrick Rose, that are interested in Taj Gibson, that would be interested in Tyus Jones, that would be interested in a lot of the guys who you might be able to look at and say, yeah, we could give them up right now because we might lose them next summer anyway. Or, so you have that factor. And then the other one is, let's say they're buyers. Let's say they're in the 9th or 10th seed right at the February deadline. What do we see as their biggest needs, and what could they try and go out and get with, maybe they use a Taj to go out and get a shooter. I'm not sure. What do you think would be kind of their best
young dynamic point guard. Mm-hmm. Jeff Teague has an option that I assume he will exercise next year for $19 million. If Tom Thibodeau is still the coach, I do not expect Tyus Jones to be around. Maybe they'll match restricted free agency on Tyus if the offer is low enough and they don't have any other options. Jared Bayless has to be regarded as an extraneous piece right now. So if you could, in a perfect world, if the Timberwolves were buyers and you could leverage a team that wants to shed salary and wanted to take that $14 million of Taj Gibson's off the books and give the Wolves a young dynamic point guard who, Spencer Dinwiddie's making 12 to 15. Now, Brooklyn isn't in that position where they want to shed salary. I'm not sure Miami is either, and I don't know how much Dragic is making, but, and I know he's hurt right now. But that kind of guy, that kind of guy who isn't the alpha guy, will still understand that the offense goes through Cat. Somebody who's fundamentally sound, so you don't have to, train him too much. That would be somebody I'd be interested in as a buyer. But again, I think there'll be sellers, and Glenn Taylor may decide that it's time to cut salary before he goes crazy, before Towns' deal kicks in. And I'm somebody who's very much in favor of re-signing Saric when he's up.
For sure.
And that's going to be a big number because he's looking like a really good player. So it could go either way, and there are some intriguing possibilities.
Yep. Jeff German asked, do the Wolves trainers have any say in the minutes the players play? I can't fathom why Tibbs would risk a player like Rose playing heavy minutes in a blowout win when he knows his injury history. I would say, in my perspective, yes, I think the trainers do have some input into that, into what a player can do. If you're talking about the Bulls game, I would say that's a little different because Derrick Rose was playing at home in the United Center for the first time in forever, was playing really well. And I think that Tibbs he doesn't often kind of go to the sentimental card, but I think that he knew how much that game meant to Derrick Rose, and he wanted him to be able to soak up the MVP chance at the free throw line. He wanted him to be able to kind of bask in that glory again, because frankly, I think he's earned it for this team.
I agree. I agree with Jeff as well. I think that there are some things that are just automatically, if you don't like Tom Thibodeau, there are some things that are very easy to criticize about him. I happen to think that the Tibbs hate is slightly excessive, but the justification, even when it's not excessive, is sufficient. I think net value-wise, what happened with the Butler situation should have cost him his job, quite frankly, is what I believe. Mm-hmm. But all that said, however Tom Thibodeau uses Derrick Rose,